Hello and welcome back to Patriots Radio. Now, originally I did not intend to talk about a bunch of inciting incidences and dramatic attempts at government takeovers, but I figured with my ground news app going off today and letting me know of all these things happening, I'd figure I compile a lot of the incidences that have been happening since Saturday and see what I could do about neatly describing it and explaining to you guys. It's not just so good that we talk about what the things that we'd want to do and the things we'd like to do. We also have to be vigilant and be aware of the problems and issues that go on globally. Powers change and take different forms, and corruption can hide in many faces. Today I'm going to start with the United States, of course, my neck of the woods. And on December 3rd, there was an event called the Holly Drag Storytime event, which was organized by the Red Oak Community School and was to be hosted by three drag queens. This is all going on in Columbus, Ohio, by the way. They were going to be there to read to the kids and perform some holiday numbers, according to some of the articles. In response to these three drag queen stars, about 50 to 70 members of the Ohio chapters of the Patriot Front and Proud Boys began to march up to the Universalist Unitarian Church, where the event was being held near. And along the way, of course, they got themselves organized in their guns and some tactical gear, some face masks to hide, their identities. They coming in with their pathetic looking shields and everything. And they're sitting here, sig heiling, giving Nazi salutes. They're shouting all kinds of chants saying life, liberty, and victory, and reclaim America. Now, there was a lot of arguments and debates about the discussion for protection prior to this event that was asked by the community organization. And according to the organization, who I'm more inclined to believe on this one, the police failed to do anything. And the reason why I'm going to say that and not bother with the police testament, with the police's public statement, is because the police failed to address the organization's fears and requests for the event's protections because they wanted to immediately victim blame and say that the organization's leaders were liars, and it doesn't make sense when their claims to save face doesn't explain the fact that these right-wing nut jobs were still able to march directly up. They didn't drive. They didn't just meet there. They marched straight up together on the streets. There's videos all over Twitter of them going up to the church. Now, a lot of police testimony said that they had people organized around the neighborhood to look out. I'm sure one of these police officers would have done something if that was their job, if they were there to patrol and be on the lookout for these types of individuals. Reality is, I'm willing to bet that the police officer is just lying. The police officers are lying to just save their ass, and if by happenstance they aren't, this is also in Hawaii and Ohio, and we got a lot of incel and terrorist threats, right-wing terrorist threats, in the Midwest right now. But let's jump down from Ohio and let's address some incidents, two attacks on substations in North Carolina. So these attacks destroyed or caused a lot of damage that was very apparent that it wasn't one or two pieces that needed to be replaced, but actual damage to infrastructure in these machines. They were caused by just gunfire, although it's not specified what type of gunfire yet. The FBI has also swiftly joined in what is believed to be an intentional attack on the grids. This wasn't some accident. This wasn't some drunk idiots. This was an intentional attack. The blackout initially affected 45,000 people, with power believed to be fully restored today for almost everyone. However, I haven't received an update to know how true that is. It raised concerns from a report from the 1990 from the Congressional Office of Technology Assessment, where it claimed that our energy infrastructure is physically very weak and vulnerable. Not necessarily the substations themselves, like what was attacked, but more so in forms of distribution, such as the networks of power lines and these towers that can carry these lines everywhere. These are easy to take down and easy to cut off power from a variety of people. It doesn't take a lot to attack it, and it can be everywhere. Since we have a decentralized grid, it makes it very decentralized sets of grids, and then Texas is bullshit. Let me rephrase. You have these grids that work very well at distributing energy where it needs to, but it is very poor in defending itself against domestic attack. Um, and if you're in Texas, also very vulnerable to weather because you refuse to invest in it. But that is not what we're here to talk about today. The current cause and perpetrators are still unknown from this attack, although it is believed by many to be related to an alt-right cause to target a drag show that was 18 plus that was held in the area that, by the way, still performed. They still carried on. They did it with flashlights, and more power to them. Uh, but yeah, it's just scary that now we seem to be escalating to actual attacks on our energy infrastructure, like the backbone of modern society. But we don't have time to really sit in those fears right now because we got to go to Germany, where we got to talk about something terrifying. Um, for the homeland of the Nazis, we have what seems to be the dying embers of people who still believe in some far right fascist ideas, even if they aren't willing to claim Nazis and Hitlers directly. We have coup plots in Germany that were foiled in a mass police raid against these far right groups. 24 were from Germany directly, and one is a suspected supporter from Russia, with 27 others suspected in this investigation for related causes. As there was a why am I losing the words? There was a coup attempt to directly attack government bodies and agencies of the German government directly, like literally German version of January 6th. Although, let's be a little more historically accurate, it was like the burning of the Reichstag. They wanted to go in, cause a problem, and use this as a justification to assert control. Uh, it's important to understand, I think, to explain this first. This is what was known as a group that follows, I hope I'm saying this right, Reichsbürger, Reichsbürger movement, which is mainly the idea of Germans who believe in the 1871 borders of the German empire. Um, they're really disguised Nazis. They're alluding to a Second Reich while not acknowledging the attempts at the Third Reich. Uh, that have maybe varying degrees of differences in opinions, but generally they just don't care for the modern German government. They don't care for any of the modern institutions. They find them all to be illegitimate, so any laws that are upholding a modern German government and parliament-style democracy is null and void in their opinions. I wanted to make that very clear. Because this particular cell that was investigated and was arrested was organized by former paratrooper, a man named Rudiger VP. He's 69 years old. German privacy laws don't allow them to say any more about the person's name. With the suspected ringleader and minor German noble, they like to use the term prince, and so I'm going to use it here now. Prince Heinrich the 13th PR. So Heinrich, this dark prince, if you will, this very Nazi prince, if you will, Uh, he allegedly had aid from a Vitalia B. This is the Russian supporter we were talking about, to try and receive help from Russia after his cell put Heinrich in charge after their coup attempt, supposing it was successful. This would be their attempt to try to get the Russian embassy to talk to Putin and the whole Russian government as a whole to legitimize their coup attempt in Germany and give them an ally. Uh, Obviously, Russia denies any links to the groups. They deny any contact or any conversation with them whatsoever. It was literally said in the article I read is like Russia did not seem to respond positively at all with what we know. However, very little is known. Um, the investigation sheds light on suspects in the Special Forces Command called, I'm probably going to say this wrong, Bundeswehrs. Um, Bundeswehr. Bundeswehr. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but there's one person specifically from the Special Forces Command and several from the Bundeswehr's reservists with rumors of long held far right sympathies in their ranks. So, yes, scary idea that you've got special forces, your military men, also having far right sympathies. Something we also quickly noticed after 2020 with a lot of these military nut jobs going crazy, saying racist ass shit. But we'll go back to that another time. This ain't the conversation for it. Uh, but yeah, these groups also seem to hold onto QAnon conspiracies, very familiar here, and also raised deep state fears in a lot of their rhetoric with each other and in their attempts to overthrow the modern government. On a related note with the Reichsbürger movement, I also caught wind of another story, a plot all the way back in April of that was foiled in the arrest of one Elizabeth R. This was in relation to a kidnapping plot of the health minister Karl Lauterbach. I apologize about these names. It's Lauterbach. With the escalated idea of wanting to attack power plants and create the conditions for civil war amongst Germany. The plot originally took place in April, like I said. Today, however, Thursday, as I'm recording this, was the formal procedure of the arrest and charging, so they're figuring all that out for Elizabeth. Um, Interesting note, I did not personally get to look too deep into this, but the articles that I read mentioned that a lot of her online presence and her writings were just like filled with anti-Semitism, anti-government sentiment, and anti-democracy writings with a bunch load of QAnon conspiracies and just other like really out there conspiracies that are easy to debunk. It's really just crazy how far these older people seem to be going. Um, but as far as domestic threats go within cities, we do have one instance from our lovely little hermit kingdom, the North Koreans seem to have taken advantage of an unlikely computer exploit to target and attack specific, or not specific, because we don't know if they were targeted for their identity, but targeted individual South Koreans with a computer file attack. So let me go into that real quick, because this is the one thing I know the least about, as I'm not a computer savvy or technically inclined individual. Um, so Google's threat analysis group discovered a zero-day vulnerability in Internet Explorer that has been exploited by North Korean threat actors. A group that goes by a moniker of APT37, but I will be just addressing as Erebus as they're also known as the Erebus group. So Erebus has been targeting individuals in South Korea with a Microsoft Word file. The file name is 221031 Seoul Yongsan Itaewon incidents, which is a reference to the Halloween tragedy that took 158 lives and injured 200 more. This happened earlier this year, so if none of you knew about that, definitely read in. It's very sad. It reminds me a bit of Astroworld, but it's unrelated. It seems to be kind of a troll, a trolling type message. I don't know. There's not much to read into it. They took advantage of the fact that Microsoft Office still renders HTML files in Internet Explorer and not in Microsoft Edge, which has now become Microsoft's new go-to internet plugin. The file was found to download a rich text file remote template, and then it was able to take advantage of the zero-day JavaScript exploit, which was the exploit that they found through Internet Explorer. Now, when Internet Explorer runs HTML, they would read a specific code that had been put onto the file, which would run a search through JavaScript to enact the specific exploit that they were trying to take advantage of. Now, of course, as of right now, there has already been a patch made, but when the exploit was executed, it would set off an arbitrary amount of code whenever you're trying to get trying to get control of a website or a computer. As of right now, it's unknown what the payload currently is for these kinds of attacks. However, the Erebus group is known for delivering malware like Rock Rat, Blue Light, and Dolphin. Now, I, again, am not a computer guy. I have no idea what any of these malware attacks do, how they work, or anything. Maybe down the line, we can really invest into learning about computers and learning about the internet and figuring out how we seem to be able to operate and the infrastructure it takes to get that going. But until then, I'm not up for that task. So we'll have to wait for more expert-minded individuals to come and take care of this. But a little scary feeling that I thought of that I was not aware of, but just felt relevant to bring up. But back in the world of modern-day real-life terror, instead of digital problems for us to worry about, an unexpected, for me at least, an unexpected result of the ongoing Ukraine conflict has been that it's caused a large rise in fuel and fertilizer prices in Peru. Now, this got me learning a bit more about the current situation in Peru and explains what the fuck happened with their former president, Pedro Castillo. So, when they, of course, like everybody else around the globe, they had been suffering from massive inflation issues. However, when the West began really putting sanctions on Russia, it created interesting economic ripple effects, let's just say. So, like I said, one of those being the large rise of price in fuel and fertilizer. This made an ongoing problem in Castillo's presidency a lot worse, and the man went into panic and overdrive. Castillo immediately orders curfew in Lima, which is the capital, by the way, like minutes before midnight on Monday. It was to last from 2 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. Tuesday, the next day, like literally in the matter of minutes, or 2 hours, I guess I should say, because he was attempting to avoid nationwide protests. It did not work. It was greatly ignored and deemed illegal by the Peruvian Congress. This has only served to add greater concerns of overwhelming inflation and Castillo's recent impeachment trials, which he survived, which I found out he's been through 2 impeachment trials in Peru and has survived it. On Wednesday, so yesterday, since recording this, Castillo has made the unprecedented moves of trying to both dissolve Peru's Congress and install an emergency government. He wanted to try to speed run a coup and be a dictator is what he did. Obviously, we got some people who did not want that. This move has also been deemed illegal. Several cabinet members have resigned, and Congress voted to vacate the presidency and arrest Castillo. There is now a new president in office. Her name is Dina Bolarte. I'm so sorry. The last name is spelled Boluarte. I am sorry. I don't know. So yeah, quick speed running coup attempt was not what I expected today. Uh, However, we have to get with the uncomfortable facts and reality of the protests right now in Iran specifically. Um, this one's kind of gross in a way I never expected a protest could be, as this has taken sexual violence in a way I hadn't thought of before, but since I've been reading this, has been stuck in my mind. Before I get to that, I did want to first explain that as of today, Thursday, December 8th, the first person has been executed directly related to the protest. A young man, a young 23-year-old man by the name of Mohsen Sekari, has become the first to be executed. Um, and what I'm now starting to call a proto-revolution, instead of the Iranian protests. Uh, Masan, allegedly attacked a security officer by stabbing him in the shoulder with a long knife and blocked a road in Tehran during the initial protests back in September. There were claims that the knife was given to him by a confidant that so far seems to be not found, and I'm willing to believe is made up. A confidant by the name of Ali, and was said to participate in the violence and the riots, and he will be paid greatly. Again, this is not Mohsen's word, and unfortunately, we will not get to hear that. This is the word of the Iranian police. Um, Obviously, I'm not trusting that. I am not trusting the religious state of Iran to tell me what their prisoner that they executed said as the reason for them wanting to join in the uprising for their freedom. His charges, by the way, included creating terror and fear and depriving people of their freedom and security. Another one was waging war against God. And finally, corruption on earth. These are interesting crimes to have, and ones you can only have conceivably, in my narrow viewed opinion. You can only have them in a non secular government, in a theocracy style government. If there is a religious center to your attitude about governance, I feel like that is the breeding ground for these kinds of justifications. And it is gross. It is incredibly unsettling, but it only extends to what comes next, as now there are reports that, despite the fact that Iran plans to carry out more executions, with the excuse of needing to defend against plots by foreign powers, especially the United States, they are also having to deal with security forces, much like the Basij militia. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. Seem to have ignored right control practices such as shooting in the thighs and legs to avoid vital organs. Um, they have made claims that they're going to dissolve their morality police. However, there has been little to no action to assume that that seems to be the case. Getting back to the security forces, there are a lot of reports by these doctors on the ground while Iran is suffering an internet blackout, There are women, many women, protesting right now that have begun to show signs of birdshot being targeted around their faces, their breasts, and their genitals specifically, whereas men are still being attacked in their legs, butt, and their back. Um, it's hard to get these stories out there, but they are starting to come out, and it hurts because if you find the right articles, you start to get to read what are claimed to be firsthand accounts of these women who have been shot. These women who say that they can't even trust the doctors because they are feared that the police will go in and target them before they can even try to get any medical help. Or that they, not that they can't trust the doctors, but that they can't go to the hospitals. That they can't leave the protest either, because then that defeats the whole reason of why they're out there protesting. And it hurts. And as these doctors are trying to take care of them, a lot of them know is like, you have to go seek specialized, trusted medical help. Otherwise, you could suffer some serious infections with these bird shots where they're being placed. Um, it's gross. There are doctors who are quoted saying that this is just the sign of weak and fragile men who are taking out their sexual aggression and violence on women like this because they have no other way to handle themselves. A lot of that's just me. I'm just angry right now. It's just disgusting. It's truly disgusting. And I could say that 1,000 times over just because it would reinforce my emotional context right now. But it's so depraved. It's so vile. And all I can do is sit here and read about it online. There's nothing I can do about it sitting at home. But it's an update I felt was important to hear, to remind people that yes, Iran is still going, or Iran is still going through their proto-revolution right now. People are still being attacked. Things are changing on the ground. People are still dying by the hands of the state. And they're still using God to defend their actions. But that doesn't have anything to do with my next fear. And this one spans global powers. Now, this one is not any attack. This is not any aggression necessarily. But it's a slow simmer of fear. Now, the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman lavishly received the Chinese President Xi Jinping whenever he came to visit recently. Xi claimed that this would be a new era in the between the region's policies and their future economic ties. Um, th- they are working on increasing a deepening energy and economic ties to each other, which they have done so between 34 deals in green energy, information technology, cloud services, transportation, construction, and more. This helps China, the largest oil consumer globally, with their Silk Road Revival Project, the Belt and Road Initiative, while increasing their economic combativeness against the United States. This also helps the Saudis distance themselves from the U.S. given the 2018 murder of Jamal Khashoggi and its current Saudi energy policy, and the refusal to help isolate Russia oil from the global market. Long story short, these are two countries with two very large hands in the course of global history and the global economics and policy. And these are two heads that are moving against the West. Now, of course, like many socialists, I do understand in a general context, U.S. bad. However, I also know that that is far too simple of an answer to rely on in every context. We have to be critical and we have to be more observant of larger trends. I don't know what this could spell. I don't know the end result. I don't know if at the end of this, whatever trade agreement and Belt and Road Initiative maintenance and upkeep they manage to have after they break ground, I don't know what good or bad that'll do. But I do know that these general increasing economic and energy ties with each other is going to put a larger strain on the West, which will only serve as a good backbone for an argument for either a good progressive home state revitalization of our industries, or a very, very bad set of just newer rhetoric that is set on creating economic sanctions and trade wars with, the Saudis and with China. And that could cause a rise in our own oil issues. This could cause ExxonMobil and Shell to finally start drilling on many of their oil leases, which they haven't even touched. Um, this can cause a lot of ecological disasters at home too, long term, and these are all going to be held by these slow, but ever present and never able to slow down momentum of policies and global conflicts and global decisions. Whereas we are on the ground who has to deal with the oil that's being dug up in our backyards or in our Gulf. These things are issues, and the problems can be numerous and complicated. There is so much going on around the world, and it's easy to want to be alert and fall into the trap of overexposure. And then you burn yourself out emotionally, and then you burn yourself out mentally. It's a trap I find myself falling into time and time again. Because I keep telling myself that I have to be as good as I want to push everyone else to be. I have to be aware and alert of these things. I can't fall into ignorance. Ignorance is how we lose. Ignorance is how we fall behind. And if I'm going to avoid that, I have to lead by example. But at the same time, there is a limit. There is a human limit. And understanding that limit matters. So we must be careful to not be aggressive against those who don't know better or haven't taken the time to research. They're human and they have priorities in their own life that they have to worry about. It's hard to think about global issues when you're starving and you need to feed yourself, or if you even have kids or family members that you are also responsible for, or if you're behind on bills. These are issues. Issues that are important in everyday's life and need to be addressed. So it is up to us to also be kind to those who don't know better. There are things that they're dealing with that could be distracting them. So when dealing with others, be kind and be informative. And when dealing yourself, also be kind and be informative. Learn when to call a limit and learn when to be nice to yourself. Just understand that long term we can't afford to be ignorant, and at some point we should come back and learn these things. We should come back and be aware of current events. It's hard to push yourself in the ass to do this more and more, but it's going to be more and more important that we as individuals do this, and that we as a community and a society collectively discuss this. I'd like to find a nice way to wrap these kinds of conversations up, but until I have a dedicated intro and outro, I will not have one. I will end this with saying that I have decided to reopen my Discord server, which is an activist server called the Patrocene. The Patrocene is a solar punk collective that aims to do quite a few things. But to put simply, I am building a local team to help me focus on creating models that can be tried out in local areas for circular economics, that could be for recycling efforts, that could be for community aid, any kinds of great things. But what we want to do is experiment with local models to encourage a more solar punk style of living and thinking amongst each other and our neighbors. Because Rhetoric doesn't always work, and rhetoric isn't everyone's strong suit. But action can prove things. Action can show people things that they didn't believe in. So, we want to create a network here in Houston where I'm based, where we can experiment with these things on the ground. But I'm also leaving the Patricine open to establish a digital counterpart, a way for people to still connect and, work with together. Now, I may have a Houston cell, but there are other organizations that I am talking to, both small and large, that operate around the country. And these seem to take one of two styles of groups. They are either a locality based group like mine in Houston, as we are a cell that operates in a defined area, or they are an action specific or a service specific type group. I've come across a few that are just archives and resources, and a few that are learning how to train people to be better at things like phone banking when it comes to elections, or learning how to distribute information in an easy and concise way, and such as socialist theory, such as composting basics, such as DIY tools, assessments, and history that people have. These are two different modes by which we are trying to explore, refine, and operate. If we can find a cohesive way to organize these two styles of groups, we can find a way to cooperatively push forward together. So long as we don't get dissolved talking about theory. Theory pulls out the arrogance in us and it makes us stupid. When we combat our egos and not when we discuss the differences in ideas. Let me emphasize that. Understanding theory is very important to understanding solid reasons for why we do a lot of what we do. Having butthurt feelings because someone called you stupid while explaining why your viewpoint is filled with holes is not very constructive, though. Um, so yeah, we're trying to figure that out. Currently, the server's dead, but I'm wanting to revitalize that. And every week, as we get more of these episodes out, I'm hoping this encourages more of you guys to come. And as we figured out a more structured way for us to organize and practice, I'm hoping this can carry on into our sister groups. Until then, like I said, I don't really have a nice way to end this off. I just hope you guys have a wonderful day. Know that Mama Terra loves you and that I love you. Take care, guys.